children at St Helens and all the children at St Mary's. It's Mr Spence here, and we've got a really exciting special collective worship for us today. And I've got one of my friends, someone who I've taught with before, Mr Robertson, who's really kindly joined us. Now, you won't know Mr Robertson, probably you won't have seen him before. So, Mr Robertson, I wondered if I could ask you just a couple of questions. So what is it? What's your job at the moment? What do you do? What's your role?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Spence. Well, I'm quite lucky actually because I have two jobs. So half of the time I'm a teacher and I teach in Bristol in a Year 5 class. And the other half of the time I work for the church and I help teachers learn more about RE, and I go into schools and I work with teachers to help them improve RE in their schools.
Fantastic. And Mr Robinson's actually worked with us at St Helens and St Mary's to help us with our teachers with their RE teaching and to think a bit about that. And I've asked Mr Robinson today if he'd be able to come and lead our time of collective worship together. So I'm going to hand over to him. He's going to, I think, share a little story with us. I think there's a video too. And then, like we normally do, we'll finish with a question for you to think about in your class. But today we've also got a prayer that's been recorded by one of our year 2 children at St Mary's. So we're going to finish with that today at the end as well. So Mr Robertson, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I want to introduce you to somebody who is a real hero of mine. And I found out about her a couple of years ago. And ever since then, I've just been really inspired by her. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about her. So I've got a book here which tells the story of her life. And her name is Wangari Maathai. And sadly, she died a few years ago, but she came from a country called Kenya, which is in East Africa. And it's a really beautiful country, but unfortunately, it had some problems. And one of the problems the country had was many of the people who lived in that country were quite poor, and they didn't all have access to electricity. And so to keep their houses warm and to cook for their families, they would go out into the forests and they would cut down trees for firewood. Now, I've got a little picture here. You can see people going out into the forests. And that sounds fine, doesn't it? Going out and cutting down trees. But the problem is, if you've got many hundreds and thousands and millions of people doing that, you can imagine what starts to happen, can't you? The forests get smaller and smaller and smaller. And the problem with that is it doesn't just affect the people, because they have to walk a long way into the forest to get their wood to come back and cook, carrying really heavy bundles of wood, but also all the amazing wildlife. You can imagine the sort of wildlife you get in places like Kenya, beautiful birds and elephants, all those animals lose their habitats. So Wangari thought about this and she decided to try and make a difference. And her idea was really very simple. Basically, she decided she would start planting trees. So around her village, she would grow little tree saplings and then she would go out where the forest had been cut down and she would start planting trees. And that started being really successful. So then she started teaching other women in villages around that part of Kenya, and more women went and started planting trees. I've got a little picture of her here planting one of her trees. The problem was that the government, the people who ran Kenya at that time, weren't very nice people. And they got quite worried about what she was doing and they didn't agree with it. And so they started trying to stop the women from planting all of the trees. And eventually, and this is quite extraordinary really, she was actually arrested and put in prison just because of what she was doing. The government was scared and didn't like that she was criticizing them, and she was telling them to stop cutting down the trees and stop the development and to save the animals. And so she spent time in prison. I've got a picture here. And she never gave up. Even when she was in prison, she stood tall, and eventually she was released and she won an amazing prize. It's called the Nobel Peace Prize. And this is one of the most important prizes you can get in the world. And they give it to really special people who make a real difference in the world. And the exciting thing was she was the first African woman ever to win this prize. And so she's a real inspiration to me. And I'd like to show you a clip. And in this clip, we actually get to meet Wangari, and she tells a story about a hummingbird. And this is at the moment one of my very favorite stories. And she's quite an amazing person. So it'd be nice for you to actually hear her speaking her own words. So I'm going to attempt now to play this clip.
We are constantly being bombarded by problems that we face. And sometimes we can get completely overwhelmed. The story of the hummingbird is about this huge forest being consumed by a fire. All the animals in the forest come out and they are transfixed as they watch the forest burning, and they feel very overwhelmed, very powerless, except this little hummingbird. It says, I'm going to do something about the fire. So it flies to the nearest stream, takes a drop of water, and puts it on the fire and goes up and down, up and down, up and down, as fast as it can. In the meantime, all the other animals, much bigger animals like the elephant with a big trunk, could bring much more water. They are standing there helpless, and they are saying to the hummingbird, what do you think you can do? You're too little. This fire is too big. Your wings are too little. And you're big, so small, you can only bring a small drop of water at a time. But as they continue to discourage it, it turns to them without wasting any time and tells them, I am doing the best I can. And that, to me, is what all of us should do. We should always feel like a hummingbird. I may feel insignificant, but I certainly don't want to be like the animals watching as the planet goes down the drain. I will be a hummingbird. I will do the best I can.
So that was the story of the hummingbird, and I hope you could hear it. But basically in the story, as you saw, there's a really huge fire in the forest and it's really burning. It looks like it's out of control, and all the animals have run around. The big animals are standing there watching it, doing absolutely nothing, thinking they can't do anything. But the little hummingbird is flying to and fro, picking up just one tiny little drop of water in its beak and dropping it on the fire. And all the other animals are saying, what are you doing? You're not going to make a difference to this fire, and you're too little. And the hummingbird is saying, I will do the best I can. And I think this is a really powerful story. And I had some questions for you that I thought you might like to talk about in your classes. The first thing is, in the story, there's a large forest fire, and you can see that lots of damage is being done. And I wondered what you thought might be some of the big problems facing our planet. What might be the big fire that could be damaging our planet at the moment? The second question I had was, when the other animals say to the hummingbird, you're too little, you can't make a difference, do you agree with them? Do you think that if you're little, if you're small, if you're just one person in a school, that you can't make a difference to big problems, or do you think you can? And then my third question is, when the hummingbird says, I will do the best I can, I wondered if you might think about, if you were to do the best you can in St Mary's or St Helens, what would that look like? We're faced with so many big issues in the world, but we don't want to be like the big animals and do nothing. What could we do? What could you do in your classes? What could you do in your schools? What could we do as a community to try and make a difference, to be like the hummingbird, even if it's picking up one little drop of water and carrying it to the fire? What would your little drop of water be?
Mr. Robertson, that was great, and it made me think of so at St Helens and St Mary's we have a little phrase that we use with our curriculum, things we're learning, which is about being a brave change maker, someone who can make a difference. And there's a little quote that we talk about sometimes from a child who's made a big difference, Greta Thunberg, and her book's called "No One Is Too Small to Make a Difference," and it made me think, as I was thinking about the hummingbird, about how even though that hummingbird was so small, the amazing difference that we can make when we try and do something. So, and the bigger difference we can make when we try and do that together as well as a group. So that was really interesting and just made me think about that. So thank you so much for joining us. We're going to finish our time of collective worship today with a prayer, which is going to be from one of our year twos. It's Zach at St Mary's, and he's going to read that. And then we're going to finish with a song. And like we've been doing in the last few weeks. In fact, I heard about this from Mr. Robertson's school, that half of you can sing at once, can't you? And then the other half can join in for the chorus. So I'm sure your teacher will organise that now. But have a great day. It's great to see you. And Mr. Robinson, thanks once again for joining us. Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks, Adam.
If you'd like to make this prayer your own, please say Amen at the end. Dear God, you made the world a beautiful place. We're sorry we spoiled it. We're sorry your plan went wrong and you had to send your son to fix it. Please forgive us for being unkind to your creation and help us forgive people who are unkind to us. Amen.